Han Solo is one of the most iconic movie characters of all time, and one of the most recognizable Star Wars heroes. And today we're going to look at his story, but only from the movies. So let's get started, and please like and subscribe, it will greatly help the channel. Let's start off with Solo, a Star Wars story. From the start of the film, we already know that Solo has a habit of doing dealings with people without thinking of how he could pay them back, and that he's a loose cannon who tries to talk his way out of problems. However, in Solo, we see that he's a lot more younger and naive as he tries to loosen the situation by cracking jokes. Heck, he's probably even more of a screw-up in this period of his life than what he was in A New Hope. However, he does appear to be more optimistic and hopeful of life, wanting to buy a ship and see the galaxy, a common dream that a lot of Star Wars heroes have. He also seems to be a lot more helpful, like when he tried to help one group of rebels at the end of the film, called the Cloud Riders, and according to him, he has no people. The only close relationship he has is with Qi'ra. His dreams to escape his old life seem to come true when he gets something that can seemingly buy his way to a new life. However, he is separated from Qi'ra and is forced to join the Imperial Army. When he finds a man named Beckett, he starts off as trouble to Han, denying his request to come with him on his assignment, and clearly has no qualms with him getting killed, considering he ratted him out to the Empire. But once he eventually does come with them, he at first seems to be somewhat of a father figure to him, giving him advice about the smuggling life, and seemingly helping him understand the galaxy. At first, Han Solo really seems to believe this, as he's willing to help him out when Han gets Beckett in trouble with a group called Crimson Dawn. However, Han does pick up on what he is as the movie goes on, which is a scumbag who would betray him, even though it's not personal. So when Beckett betrays him to Crimson Dawn by telling them his plan, it turns out Han was the one who tricked him and gave him a false plan. Han Solo picked the right lessons from him, which is trust nobody, which also indicates that he's quite a fast learner. And while the advice helps, it seems the real contributing factor to him turning into a roguish smuggler is with Qi'ra. Since the beginning of the film, Qi'ra was the only thing he was fighting for. Him getting involved with gangsters through bribing the Empire was all so he can explore the galaxy with her. Even him getting money and joining the Empire was because of that. Once he finally found her, he continued to help her with her missions, in a way to possibly be with her again. However, it's very clear that she's not the same person he knew at the start of the movie, as she now works for Crimson Dawn and is one of the top lieutenants. She learned the lessons Beckett told Han earlier. However, due to her seemingly being the only close connection he has, and him already expecting that Beckett might not be the best person, he never really picks up on the fact that she is basically working for one of the most dangerous crime organizations and is literally their second in command, who wouldn't hesitate to threaten someone. This is also not helped by the fact that she is still somewhat affectionate towards him. Her goal isn't the same as Han's. Then, by the end of the film, she flat out, in some ways, does a triple cross. Not only was she not genuinely on Han's side, but also not on her boss's side either. She was working with Maul this whole time, and so by the end, she regrettably leaves Han behind, even the advice that Beckett said to seep into him. 10 years seemingly pass, and Han has already made a name for himself as a smuggler and scoundrel who has finally achieved his dream of seeing the galaxy. But he comes off a lot different than in Solo. For starters, he's a lot more cynical, grouchy, and insulting. For example, whenever he sees or hears something about the Force, something he wasn't aware of, he immediately thinks it's silly and crazy, thinking Obi-Wan is an old fossil who lost his mind. It's clear that all the betrayals and misfortunes he's gotten in the past affected his worldview. Not to mention, in his line of work, he's smuggling, a job where he must constantly not trust anyone and worry about his life. This is also a job where you might have to steal and kill just to get by. Adding fuel to the fire is him constantly having to deal with the Empire, and the Rebellion barely made an inch on them until the events of Rogue One. Whenever he feels like he's being made to do something, or when something doesn't go his way, like when Luke berates him for not wanting to save Leia, he starts complaining and uses the excuses of, what if something bad happens to me? And yes, selfishness is also a big part of this character too, as those are most of his motives in the first movie, only taking them to Alderaan after they said they will pay him, not to mention charging them extra to avoid the Empire. He clearly isn't worried about their safety, and instead thinking to himself that it will be harder to get them off the planet. Heck, the only reason he agrees to help Luke save Leia is because there's a reward in it for him. He also appears to be somewhat more cautious. He doesn't want to get involved in anything that he thinks he can't handle. He simply doesn't want to face it. Like when they're about to attack the Death Star, he says that what they're doing is suicide, which is a bit different from the Han we see in Solo. So right now, you're probably saying, he's just a bad guy. Heck, he even kills a guy who rightfully calls him out for screwing over Jabba the Hutt, someone he should know is very powerful. However, he's not a complete scumbag, and he has some skill, as by the end of the movie, he does come back to help the Rebellion, even though he was close to escaping. He mentions how he wasn't going to let him take all the glory, but it's quite clear that even from this movie, he's willing to help out a friend to do their heroic actions. This continues in The Empire Strikes Back, and he tries to help Leia get off the planet when it's being attacked by the Empire, showing that he clearly does care about the people close to him. He's also very skilled at improvising, as when his plans usually don't work, he is usually quick to react, like when he shoots at the Imperial troops when leaving the planet, and when he says that Chewbacca's loose as a way to throw off the Imperial guards. We also see that he's apparently very street smart, as he sometimes likes to calmly talk to people and stretch the truth whenever he's trying to make a deal or weasel his way out of trouble. He is also an amazing pilot, who is not only able to do great maneuvers and outrun the Empire with what the movie calls a piece of junk, but he's also very confident in his abilities, like we went into an asteroid field despite it being very dangerous. Let's talk about his relationships next. Starting with Luke. At first, Han sees him as nothing more than how the audience sees him, a wide-eyed farm boy in way over his head, which makes sense considering the trouble he got himself into at the bar. It is also possible that he sees a younger version of himself. However, Luke, unlike Han, doesn't gravitate towards the smuggler life. Instead, he just wants to be a Jedi, a hero, so he holds on to the good values more strongly than he does. So he's able to challenge his view of the world a bit more, while also still seemingly caring about his well-being. However, he does realize something while working with someone like Luke. He can trust people, even offering him a spot on his crew. But Luke chooses to stay and fight, and this might have somewhat gotten to Han, so he decided to help him. This close friendship is still best shown in the sequel too. Then we have Princess Leia. While Luke calls him out sometimes, he's still a naive kid who Han doesn't take too seriously. Leia, however, is an experienced, hardened war general who lost way more than Han did, and probably went through way more than he did too. Yet she still keeps fighting, so she can take jabs at his more reckless and selfish actions way more than Luke can. This causes Han to feel challenged. He probably admires the fact that she still keeps fighting for the cause, despite what she had to go through. He develops feelings for her and usually tries to sweet talk to her. At first, Leia seems put off by this, but she does see him as a diamond in the rough. Then, as they spend more time in space, they get to know each other more, and his feelings become more genuine. However, it's on Cloud City where we see his real change. He meets up with Lando Calrissian again, who we first met in Solo. When we first met him, he was merely a smooth-talking gambler and smuggler, and it's clear that in the first movie, he's a dealer and a businessman, but not a complete criminal like Beckett was, and mostly just does jobs for business. So, Han feels like he could slightly trust him. Leia does not trust him one bit, probably due to the place feeling suspicious. Unfortunately, Leia's suspicion was right. Han is betrayed by Calrissian due to him making a deal with Vader to give Han to the bounty hunter in exchange for the city's protection. Han once again feels betrayed, but isn't too surprised, knowing full well what Beckett said. However, Luke and Han never betrayed him. Leia stayed with them and even tried to warn him about Lando, and Luke stopped his Jedi training to go save him. Now he has finally found some people he could trust, and so in a moment where Chewbacca tries to attack, he simply stops him because he says he needs to take care of Leia. The two confess their love, with Han saying, "I know," when Leia says, "I love you." Then, once he is saved in Return of the Jedi, he decides to help the rebellion, this time in an act of pure selflessness, and they succeed with a little improvisation. In Force Awakens, Han has apparently gone back to his smuggling ways, as after Han and Leia got married and had a son, they sent him to train with Luke. But after he turned to the dark side, he decided to retreat back to his old life. However, his luck has ran out, and there's no one left to smuggle. However, he does appear to be much wiser and knowledgeable, finally believing in the Force and more willing to accept company on his ship. He basically took the Obi-Wan role in this film. He even offered Rey a job after being impressed by her, even offering her payment, which is something he wouldn't do. He also finds out that Finn is lying, and instead of ratting him out, he gives him advice saying that Rey will eventually find out. Though once he delivers BB-8 to a person named Maz Kanata and tells her to take the droid back to Leia, he is told by her to go home. But he is hesitant, not just for his sake, but for hers too. Han probably thinks she doesn't want to see him after what happened. It's clear that after the original trilogy, he may have gone back to his old life, but he's not selfish. When he meets Leia again, they have mixed feelings. There's also this regret and frustration they have due to their son being gone, and the fact they left each other instead of facing their feelings together. Han then selflessly volunteers to help destroy Starkiller Base, and in doing so, Leia tells him that he hated seeing him leave, showing that they do still love each other. While on Starkiller Base, he meets Kylo Ren, and he finally calls him Ben for the first time. Now Han probably knows that talking to him won't bring him back to the light, but he still needs to try. While he managed to get to him a little bit, Kylo unfortunately kills him. After living most of his life being selfish, his last act is of selflessness. So, who is Han Solo? He was a person who was born into a bad life. He had optimistic dreams, but the life he had led made those dreams just that, dreams. And he grew up cynical and selfish, but thanks to the goodwill of Luke and Leia, he finally saw a better path for himself, one where he can have people he can trust and become a hero. Thanks for watching.